Devlin, Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
Bonjour, greetings then. First show from Paris. Essentially what we're doing on iOS, It's Only Sport, for the next 3 weeks is covering, of course, the Rugby World Cup. That is why we're here. And following on from the final pool match, which aired Sunday night, last night for us in Paris, the whole week is building up to the 4 quarterfinals. And that's what we're going to be fully focusing on for the next few days. But today, first day of our working week, we're also going to touch base with the EPL and New Zealand playing our second match in the One Day Cricket World Cup. A brilliant first up win over England and a second very comfy result against the Minnows Netherlands. Following this, we play Afghanistan and Bangladesh. 4 out of 4 would be a hell of a way for the Black Caps to start. And do remember, we have made the final of this tournament 2015 and 2019. Rugby-wise, we're going to kick the show off as we do with Justin Marshall, 81 Test veteran at the All Blacks. We'll wrap it all up with Peter FitzSimons, our good old Aussie mate, who has now got to come to terms with the complete failure of his beloved Wallabies. They return home, tail between their kangaroo hind legs, the worst ever Australian performance at any Rugby World Cup. Welcome to Paris, people. Bonjour, bienvenue à Paris pour le Coupe du Monde de Rugby. Martin Devlin, Lachlan Waugh. Live from Paris. We are here. Arrived safe and sound Sunday afternoon after a 30-hour long-haul flight. That was to LA and then LA to Paris. Strangely enough, not too jet-lagged today. Sussing out the lay of the land. Caught a couple of metro trains and arrived at Roland Garros. Now, for all tennis aficionados, that, of course, this is where they play the French Open. And that takes place between May and June every year. This is also where the main media centre for the Rugby World Cup is situated. In fact, the working area for all us world-accredited media is directly below Philippe Chatrier. That is the centre court for Roland Garros. Now, it all starts tomorrow, Tuesday here in France. That's when all the media conferences take place. The obligatory presses is what we're called, with all 4 teams playing here in Paris. There are 2 quarterfinals. Restricted access, though, to training runs and very limited opportunities to gain anything up close and personal. All the teams from this point on like to keep us, media rat pack, at an arm's length. As I said, 2 quarterfinals here. Paris Saturday night is the All Blacks Ireland. That's Sunday morning New Zealand time. Then Sunday night here, Monday morning back home, France versus South Africa. We are awaiting confirmation of tickets to both games. Fingers crossed for that. And if we don't get in, we'll be live broadcasting from the fan zones. In the meantime, waiting, anticipating the build-up to the All Blacks versus Italy. I believe this is the single most important test our country has played since the 2011 World Cup semi-final. So much riding on this game. We win, well, we've got pretty much a direct route to the final, playing the winner of either Wales or Argentina in the semi-final. However, we lose, and this team returns to New Zealand as the worst All Black side we have ever sent to any Rugby World Cup. Pressure? Yeah, I think that's more than enough.
Devlin.
You better believe it!
The Platform.
Justin, have you ever been this pessimistic, or maybe you're not, but have you ever felt like we are going into this situation as the underdogs and All Black side facing a Rugby World Cup quarterfinal?
Oh, look, I always believe in the All Blacks, Marty, and what they're capable of achieving and who they're capable of beating in the world, and that's anybody. However, if you were to ask me at the start of the tournament, let's go back a month and say the team that you would prefer not to meet in the quarterfinal, I would have said Ireland. I would have preferred France or South Africa. I think their DNA is easier to break down, the way that they play, whereas Ireland just so well balanced. Their defence is amazing. They're the best defensive team in the world. Their attack is really well balanced, all orchestrated by Johnny Sexton, and their back row and their forward pack formidable. And they're just a really well-drilled side, and they're number 1 in the world for that very reason. So, look, it's not to say that this is an absolute disaster for the All Blacks, but we are going to have to be at our very, very best to beat this Irish side, because they have not missed a beat right from the opening game. They've looked really good.
You know, I've talked with you for a number of years now, and I don't think I've ever heard you so impressed by another rugby side on the planet. That's what Ireland have done to you.
No, and you're probably right. I just feel that they just play a very good really sensible style of rugby that has some flair. It equally has physicality. Like Scotland went 18 phases against them, and they just defended and then eventually forced them into an error. That's just knowing each other so well. And Andy Farrell hasn't messed around like the All Blacks. Right from that opening game, he's put all his big guns out there. He hasn't really changed his team much. I could have named their side I can name their side that they're going to name at the weekend. They're just very well organised. Their game plan's good. They've got the best short passing game. So when I say short passing, like their players are nice and tight. They bring defenders in. Then they have Sexton floating around the back. Key comes short. Ringrose comes short. James Lowe floats around. They just know their methods so well. And each player knows each individual skill and strength of each other. You can't... Teams like that they're the best in the world for a reason, because they're just so methodical.
You're talking about them like we used to talk about our All Black side. I mean, with that kind of ruthless efficiency, it's their killer instinct as well. Do they have enough of that to be able to go right through this tournament from here?
Oh, look, I don't have any doubt about that. Like to be number 2 in the world before the Rugby World Cup started, and then obviously, eventually end up at number 1. All everybody was saying was they don't know how to get past any final series in the Rugby World Cup. They've never done it. Mentally, they're going to be weak. So people were throwing stones into their glass house even before the tournament started and saying that they won't be able to get through to a final and win a final. Like, where the hell does that come from? Like, history plays no part in a current team. A current team is what it is, and they're a formidable current team. I have no doubt in my mind that they've got the psyche, they've got the management, they've got the coaching, and they've got the players and individuals to go all the way to this Rugby World Cup final and win it. No doubt in my mind. They're very capable.
81 tests for the All Blacks, Justin Marshall, who's calling it for Super Sport. What do the All Blacks have to do then to bust them, to break them down?
Not be frustrated by the way that Ireland defend. That's not easy to do. It's the same way that France, to a degree, but more importantly, South Africa defend. They narrow that field on you. They force you into a zone where you have to play, instead of the full width of the field, you have to play in the middle of the field. And that creates frustration. It creates anxiety because you try to do things, you see space, but you can't get the ball there. So we have to have our leaders, our generals, the likes of Aaron Smith needs to really step up. Richie Mo'onga needs to step up, and they need to say, okay, this is not easy, but we just stick to it. Stick to task, persevere. We tend to panic when we can't get the ball to space we can see. And we try all sorts of ways to get there that are risky. And that's what you want to do. What we want to do is play non-risk. We want to still be creative. So, risk isn't stopping creativity, but it is making sure that you are very assured when you create the opportunities, you pounce on them, and you need to stay calm in doing that and stick to process.
Do you also believe in the idea of actually keeping the scoreboard ticking over? Because that's a frustration as well. I like the idea of being 3, 6, 9, 12 points ahead and then seeing the other team have to react to that by doing things that they may not want to do, by trying to score points that aren't there.
Yeah, there is very much, good equation in doing that. But equally, you've got to think about how you accumulate points, and pressure accumulates points. Look at what South Africa did to the All Blacks at Twickenham. They turned down threes and they kept going to line out, pinned the All Blacks in the 22. Eventually, it resulted in yellow cards. And all of a sudden, you're down to 14 men. And then instead of accumulating in threes, bang, you get a try conversion 7. Then you take your 3, you're on 10. So I think we've got to get our balance right. Like, at the end of the day, we don't want to go out there and think we're just going to try and win penalties and kick goals. We've got to be All Blacks. All Blacks play with ball in hand. All Blacks like to test defence, and they are resilient. I think we've got to, yes, when the opportunities are there, take them. There's no bonus points now that's going to get you qualifying out of the pool. That's all done and dusted. It's simply about winning. But you've got to make sure that you are managing that game plan in a way that you are also creating doubt and pressure on the opposition.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. Our man is Rahul Patil, who we spoke to last week for the very first time, and you were watching the whole of the game against the Netherlands. Welcome.
Thanks, Marty. Feels great to be on the show again.
Yeah, look, obviously, we aren't getting any coverage of that here. I'm trying to track it down. The French aren't as interested in cricket as they are the round ball, of course, football, and the Rugby World Cup that's going on. It looks, and by all accounts, from what I'm reading, from what I see on the scorecard, is a pretty comprehensive New Zealand performance again.
Absolutely. I mean, very, very clinical, 322 with the bat. They should have got a bit more from the position that they were in at one stage. But then the Dutch pulled it back quite a bit towards the end. Still, mid-centner providing the finishing touches on a very, very comprehensive batting display. The bowling, clinical as ever, constant pressure with the ball, and the fielding was top-notch. A win by 99 runs to go with the 9-wicket win over England. And this is as good a performance back-to-back by the Black Caps that I've seen in a long, long time.
Also significant, isn't it, that run rate is brilliant, because winning with 14 overs to spare against England, then anything over 300, magnificent.
Absolutely. I mean, come the crunch time of any world event, we know that net run rate becomes a crucial element. And it's so good to see that the Black Caps are not just winning, but they're winning by huge margins, so that if it comes down to that, they'll have that base covered as well.
Just going through some of the facts and figures here for you people. A great opening stand again. And Devon Conway, off to a bit of a rocket start. He hit 32, then Will Young 70. So Will, who failed in that first match, getting in amongst the runs, he'll be very happy with that.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the key things here is because Kane Williamson is out, somebody's going to miss out when he is fit to play. And I think with Rachin performing the way he has been, he's definitely not going to be dropped. So now that leaves two people. It's either going to be Will Young or Mark Chapman. And with this 70 today, I think Will Young has kind of deflected the X from his neck or shoulders, or whatever you might call it. And I think he's here to stay for a few games at least. So very happy for Will. He's actually been one of our consistent performers in ODI cricket over the last 1 year. So yeah, very happy for him. He's a hard worker and deserves all the success.
When you look down that leaderboard for New Zealand, 250 plus runs hit by the first 5 batsmen, that's exactly what the coach would want.
Yeah, I mean, India is a place where, you need your top 3 or 4 really need to go big. So that will be the formula that they've discussed in their team meetings, that when you get in, you need to make it count. And that's what we've seen in the last game. In this game, obviously, nobody going on to make a ton, but useful contributions. I think there were 3 50s today and a 35 by Santner. So that'll make the coach really sleep well at night.
As far as the bowling goes, really impressive. Mitchell Santner, anytime you can take a 5 for in a one-day match, I mean, that's well worthy of making mention of. 5 for 59 off 10. So how did he bowl?
He's been very, very crafty with his change of pace. It was noticeable in the game against England as well that he was mixing them up beautifully, beating them in flight. He's getting a bit of turn here on these pitches. See, his role changes because back in New Zealand, he is more of a holding bowler, someone who comes in and just tries to keep the runs down. But in India, he becomes an attacking option, and he's using that beautifully. And he just developed over the years. He's got a lot of experience playing on these kind of pitches because he plays in the IPL, and he's bringing it to the fore. Before this game started, he was actually having a lot of throwdowns with the bat. So it shows you, that he's taking his role in the side very seriously. He wants to contribute with both bat and ball. And yeah, just a great all-round cricketer to have in your side.
So what we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, is we're talking about the match against Netherlands for the Black Caps, and that's back-to-back wins. It's a hell of a way to start 2 really comprehensive performances too, and we're in Hyderabad for this. So also, I did say we're going to talk about Australia, who exited out of the Rugby World Cup in very sorry fashion indeed. And that opening match against India, well, not even scoring 200 with the bat, you're not going to win very many one-dayers, especially at a World Cup like that. And they got run down really easily. How did that, just give us your thoughts on that match.
Yeah, so Chennai traditionally is a turning wicket. It's low, slow, and turns. So the Aussies did the right thing by wanting to bat first. But by no way was that a 200 wicket. It was at best maybe a 250, 260 wicket. So they were well short. India played with 3 spinners. They played Ravi Ashwin, they played Ravi Jadeja, and they played Kuldeep Yadav, the left-arm Chinaman. And it's once those spinners get a whiff that there's something in that track for them, they will absolutely be all over you like a rash. And that is exactly what happened yesterday. Ravi Jadeja was on song, and when he's on song, he is practically unplayable. He got Steve Smith out with an absolute jaffer. And then once Smith and Warner were dismissed, it was just a procession of wickets. The Aussies did, though, try and make a little bit of a comeback with the ball because they had the Indians down, 3 wickets down for just 2 runs on the board. But then the master of a run chase, Virat Kohli himself, decided he wanted to make some runs and stood at the wicket with KL Rahul, my namesake, who has done me very, very proud yesterday. And both of them just saw India through until Kohli fell maybe about 20 short of the target. But very, very heartening to see because India's runs normally come from the top order. Rohit Sharma, the likes of Shreyas Iyer and all of them. But it was good to see that they found a way, even though they were 3 down for 2 runs on the board, they found a way to scrap, fight, and then things got easier. And then they got to that target quite easily in the end.
The Tight Five.
5 separate sporting topics. They're all about the Rugby World Cup, of course. Roughly 60 seconds there or thereabouts on each, and when the bell goes ding, well, we might even have to make that up ourselves, actually, if we can't find a bell that's handy. We'll move on to the next one. 5 questions. Are the best 8 sides through to the quarterfinals of this Rugby World Cup? Number 2, your biggest upset result. Who beating who? Number 3, best game so far that you've seen out of all of the pool matches. Number 4, who's missed out that should be there in the quarterfinals? And number 5, can this tournament justify 24 teams next time? Can it really justify 20 this time? Kicking it off with, are the best 8 sides through to the Rugby World Cup quarterfinals? I'll say unequivocally yes, and I'll say that, Locke, because they're there. And when you play tournaments like this, it's like the Football World Cup. Any world tournament, which is a knockout event, you have to make it through to the knockout stage. It's as simple as that. Now you can talk about draws, and you can talk about bad luck, and you can talk about refereeing, you can talk about ifs, buts, maybes. None of it matters, right? It's only who's actually there. And so I think that when you ask that question, the only answer, to me, the only sensible answer, the only logical answer has to be a box tick. Yes, the best 8 sides in the world are playing the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I mean, the only argument would be if, say, someone like France or the All Blacks didn't make it into the quarterfinals and Italy did somehow. Or maybe a similar case with Pool B where Scotland got through instead of Ireland or South Africa. You could argue that one of the, because that is one of the 4 best teams who missed out. But in this case, no. I mean, there'll be people saying the Wallabies. But at the same time, they lost to Wales, who we thought were at one of their lowest ebbs.
They didn't just lose to Wales, mate. They got dicked
killed
by Wales.
Yeah.
They got dicked 40-8 by Wales. That's not even a contest.
Yeah. And then a similar thing with Fiji, who just last night, our time, Paris time, lost to Portugal.
Yeah, cracking game. Absolutely cracking game.
Nearly knocked Fiji out of the World Cup. So, no, I'm the same with you. It's like a football World Cup. It's a bit like any tournament, maybe like the NBA or the NFL, where you've got to get into a knockout phase. If you missed out, you didn't deserve to be there. If you got through, you deserve to be there, because that's how the system works.
All 8 quarterfinals happening Sunday and Monday New Zealand time, Saturday, Sunday here in Paris. Question 2, biggest upset result. Now, I've only got 2 that I've written down. Fiji are in both, versus Australia, winning that one 22-15, and then losing to Portugal 24-23, which would probably have been the biggest result of the tournament if they had have missed out on the quarterfinals. But let's go back to, well, you agree with me, are those the 2 biggest upset results? Because the thing with rugby, and especially, it just doesn't throw up that many. You go back through World Cups in time. I mean, what were the standout, biggest ever upset results? You'd have to go back to 2015, Japan beating South Africa, right?
Yeah, that'd be the biggest.
That would be the biggest. And I'd say that Ireland upsetting Australia in 2011 at Eden Park, which stuffed up the draw. Like, we had this, plans of who was on whose side of the draw and so forth. And then you go back to 2019, where Japan beat Ireland. And that was kind of an upset because Ireland went in there as the number one team in the world. But actually, at the time, when you were actually at the tournament, it wasn't that big an upset. So I'd say Fiji beating Australia 22-15, for me, this time is the one.
Yeah, I mean, the Wales game, I don't know if you can call it an upset, even though, look, before the tournament, I thought Australia would top their group and win all their games.
But why did you think that? Did you think that because you believed Eddie Jones?
I believed Eddie Jones.
There you go.
I believed Eddie Jones.
He talked the best game ever, didn't he?
I just thought because he goes to a team and they always have an upturn in form for the first couple of years, and then things, S word hits the fan. I'd have to say the Fiji win over Australia, because I think especially after Fiji lost to Wales, I then expected Australia to win that game because I didn't think they'd miss out. The Portugal win over Fiji was big as well. Other than that, there hasn't been a huge upset though, has there? There really has. I mean, even Portugal winning that game, they look competitive. They drew with Georgia.
That'd be my surprise package. That'd be my box tick in terms of the team that did the most at the tournament so far without actually qualifying for the next round. Portugal.
Well, it's only their second ever tournament. And the last one they were in 07.
They won a game this time, and they drew a game. So that's outstanding, isn't it? As far as Fiji beating Australia goes, I think a lot of us actually thought that Fiji would make it, but perhaps at the expense of Wales as opposed to Australia.
Yeah, at the expense of Wales. Yep, absolutely. Again, I think along with many people, fell for Eddie Jones and what he can do.
Look at the warm-up. See, they lost all five.
I know. But you look at how the teams he's been involved with at World Cups. 03 Australia weren't expected to beat us in the semis. They did. 07 South Africa, he was a technical advisor, which is pretty much an assistant coach. They won the tournament. In 2015, gets Japan to a victory over South Africa.
I mean, that to me has been that is the biggest result of his career. Was that single.
And then the semi-final,
the semi-final in 2019. When he dicked us.
Yeah. Okay. So his teams overachieve at World Cups.
Well, they at least produce one result, don't they?
Yeah.
And Australia didn't this time. Topic 3: best game of the tournament. Ireland, South Africa for me. Not spectacular in terms of running rugby, in terms of end-to-end tries, and in terms of, if you're a neutral watching that game, you'd probably think, oh God, what an awful game of rugby. How could you possibly like that? But if you've actually grown up watching test match rugby as much as we have, obviously over the years coming from New Zealand, that to me is a real test match. That involved everything I love about rugby. It didn't need a big scoreline. Sometimes in football you can get a 0 draw or a 1-0 win, and it can be an absolutely cracking match. It was absorbing. It was intensely physical. It was two totally committed teams playing a brand of rugby that you have to play to win this tournament. All Blacks take note.
Yeah, and it's you can go back to the win over Italy where we put 96 on them, and people are losing their minds going, Italy are competitive, they play their Six Nations teams all the time, and then just none of it matters. None of it since that French game matters at all. And the blueprint, not to beat, but the blueprint of the standard of rugby is that South Africa-Ireland game. And I watched that thinking, I have not seen a shred of evidence to suggest that, one, we're going to topple these two teams, and we can do so by matching up with them physically. Because we have a really, really good expansive set of players out of our, with our backline. We always have, and we've always been a team who've been able to put forward a forward pack that at set piece time and in those nitty-gritty physical areas can hold their own against South Africa or England, these bigger physical sides. We don't have that now.
Plus, I also believe that skill-wise, if you actually matched all of our players, they do this, people in the NFL, when they have their equivalent of the All-Star game every year, right? They now have a skill set. The Pro Bowl has a skill set. If you did that in rugby and matched the All Blacks players' skills, I bet we'd win everything. We'd win passing. I mean, we could pass it through a basketball hoop from 50 metres. We'd, kick for touch would be as accurate as anyone else. Yeah. But none of that counts in the hurling confrontational aspect of playing.
What did Ben Kay say? He said it when we had him on the show a few weeks back. You don't win rugby matches or test matches or World Cup knockout matches with the fun, expansive style of play. You win it by going to the dark areas.
That's it. Look, and 13-8, that game said to me, if you needed any more proof that Ireland are the team to beat at this tournament, and what proof do you need? They've won 16 in a row going into this quarterfinal. They're the number one ranked team for a reason. I mean, we all scoff at World Rugby rankings, but when you're number one and you're number one and you're number one, you're consistently over a period of time number one, that does say something. It must say something. And then beating us down under, of course, winning the Six Nations, beating South Africa the last two times in two really tight games. I don't know what other boxes they have to tick, apart from the one that
has evaded them for a long time.
That's it. Can they get past the quarterfinal?
Let alone go on and ideally win it. Because they're the best team in the world, and they haven't shown us a reason. And I don't like the idea that a team will go to a World Cup and they've never made it out of the quarters or past the quarters before, so they can't do it this time. I don't think they can ever play a part with a coaching group and a group of players who, for the most part, there's a couple of those guys who've been around for 3 or 4 World Cups. Like Johnny Sexton, I think, played at 2011, 15, 19, so this will be his 4th one, I believe. So they might think about it a little bit more, but they're also so experienced that you don't need to worry too much about them being a deer in the headlights in the moment. But the rest of those players won't care. They don't care about the past because they weren't part of it.
Totally agree.
The coaches weren't part of it, so I don't think it plays a part.
I also believe it's a generational thing. I think people in my generation, we look back at history and it means something to us. I don't know if the younger generations give a stuff about this. And they certainly don't give a stuff about games that they weren't in, that players lost. And so on. Let's move on to number 4. Who's missed out that should be there? And you've probably answered this question already because you're saying Australia.
Yeah, I think so.
I would add to that Scotland, only because I expected a lot more of them in this tournament. But then when you look at the group that they've got, I'm not sure how many teams would have got past both South Africa and Ireland and knocked one of those two teams out.
No.
So I just think that they got absolutely
moosed
by the draw.
Yeah, but if you put the All Blacks in Pool B, we probably don't get through. I don't think we don't beat either one of South Africa or Ireland. So I think there's many teams who'd be in that position. Maybe not France, I don't know. England, if they were in Pool B, probably wouldn't have gotten out. They would have lost those 2 games to Ireland and South Africa because they are the pace setters. And the way the draw will work now, they're probably going to meet in the final.
But Australia have to be the most disappointing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Because there was a moment there, especially in Dunedin, in the first half in that test, when we put on, not the All Black B team, but we put on our squad members, right? And for that first half, they should have won that game.
Yeah.
We both said at the time, if they kick their goals, if they're taking their points on offer, which is how you win World Cup, rugby matches, they would have actually had enough of a lead at half time. Part of it is also, I was watching, and this was last night New Zealand time, Portugal versus Fiji, last night France time, I'm sorry, watching Portugal versus Fiji. And there was a time there where I think there was going to be a 12-point lead, and the commentators did say that you've got a 12-point lead, that means the opposition are going to have to score two tries.
Yeah.
Put the scoreboard pressure on, and it changes games. It changes mindsets of players. Last question. Can this tournament justify 24 teams next time? Can it justify 20 this time? I want to give you some stats.
No and no.
These are the minnows. The minnows would have to be Chile, Romania, and Namibia, right? Now, each of those teams lost all 4 of their pool matches. Chile lost with an average score of 54 points against them. Romania lost with an average score of 72 against them. Namibia lost with an average score of 64 against them. So that's 12 matches, all of them lost. The other minnows you'd have to say would be Portugal, perhaps Georgia, Uruguay. Georgia have won a couple of games in Europe, and they did beat Wales last year. But Portugal had a win and a draw, so they justify their place. Uruguay had 1 win, and that was over Namibia. So, okay, they justify their place. But those other teams, Namibia, Romania, Chile, come on. They're conceding 215 points, Chile, over 4 games, 287 Romania over 4 games, 255 Namibia over 4 games.
With Chile, this was their World Cup debut, so they got through by beating, I think, the USA. And so I get what you're saying, but they were in a group where the quality of opposition wasn't the same as Pool A or Pool B. They had England, they had Argentina, Japan, and Samoa. But again, those are 4 very hard teams to beat. It's not as if they have a Namibia like Uruguay or vice versa, or Uruguay in their group, or a Portugal or a Georgia who are probably more beatable. So,
and Romania, to be fair, are up against Ireland, Scotland, South Africa and Tonga.
Yeah,
and so
again,
that's
similar thing.
I don't know who's getting out of the group. Namibia, Italy, New Zealand, France, Uruguay.
The strange thing with Namibia is they have been at every World Cup, at least off the top of my head, since 2003. So it's not as if they're like Chile, where this is their first time, or Portugal, who were there in 07, missed the last 3, and then got to this one. So, last 3. So, I don't know. What is that? There's a big more of a question around Namibia not being there, that, okay, you can keep playing against these great teams, you can go to World Cups, you can be in pools with the All Blacks, with Argentina, with England, with whoever. It doesn't matter, because if you end up finishing last and getting dicked at every tournament, and you don't do much in between the tournaments, do you really grow as a country?
12 games, teams got hit by more than 50 points over the pool rounds. The biggest defeat was 96-0, and that was France against Namibia. We also put on 96 against Italy. Italy got absolutely towed a couple of times. France put 60 on them as well, and this is a team that's in the Six Nations. So the answer to that question, long-winded way of saying it, is no. There's no way they can justify 24 teams. A, because the gap is too big, and also because you don't want this tournament ending up finishing at Christmas.
Devlin.
Words matter.
I was
The platform.
Well, the Wallabies, if they'd even got close or scored a bonus point against Wales, they would probably be in the quarterfinals, and who knows from there. So, as that team makes their miserable way back to Australia, Lord Peter FitzSimons joins us. He's also scarpered out of Paris. What, you're on your way to Marseille? Because that's a more convenient exit, is it?
Let's start with the good news. Were you watching the Portugal
Yes.
match against Fiji?
Fantastic.
Weren't they magnificent? I mean, what a fantastic game of rugby that was. And there was only one commentator who said, don't dismiss Portugal. They're actually pretty good. Can you guess who that commentator was, Martin?
Well, I would say that if I was reading a column in the Sydney Morning Herald, I'd probably be along the right train track towards the guy that was saying that.
I said it from the beginning. I said, these guys are serious. Portugal, a lot of them play in the French competition. And Fiji, they're a wonderful bunch of people. You know, like the way they have played throughout has been great. But there's no way. But Portugal, you know, they're technically skilled. They're not as big as the Fijians. Probably, I think it's fair to say, a little more disciplined. And so when they played last night, it was just magnificent rugby, and we Australians, we needed them to win by 8 points. And everybody was saying, I've written in the Herald a couple of times, you know, look, watch out for Portugal. Everybody's saying, don't be daft. And before our very eyes, they played this magnificent rugby, kept coming, ended up 1 point ahead with 30 seconds to go. There was still a chance, a technical chance that you know they could score a converted try, and it would have been at Marseille Airport, paging Mr. Eddie Jones, please report to the counter, please. This is urgent. Your flight's cancelled. There's a bus waiting for you. You're in the quarterfinals. And had we got into the quarterfinals, we'd be against a very weakened England side. We'd have Will Skelton back. We'd have Taniela Tupou back. You know, we could have got to the semi-finals. If you get to the semi-finals, you may well get against a really battered, bruised French side, or battered, bruised South African side, or even better, a battered, bruised All Black side. Who knows what had happened? We could have won the whole damn thing, Martin. I'm telling you, it was just amazing. And all these castles in the air, these empires in the sky appeared before our eyes. But with 30 seconds to go and Portugal had the choice, we kick it out and we win the match definitely, or we go for the converted try, running from our own goal line and try to get the Australians over the line. Well, what did you think those Portuguese did? Do you think they took the selfish option and just kicked out and won the game?
I hope they did. I hope they did. And that's exactly what they did. You know, the whole, you know, we've been talking about it during the show. You know, your exit has to be the most disappointing out of all the teams. And I keep asking myself why that is, Peter. And it's because I believed the Eddie Jones hype like everyone else did. 5 losses building up to the World Cup. And you're thinking, you know, you've got the easiest pool. All you've got to do really is beat Fiji. You got thumped 40-6 by Wales, which is a disgraceful result. But as you say, as we spoke last week, it all came down to 1 up and under, and your 3 drones, your 4 guys on computers, your 19 sports scientists couldn't tell any of your players to call my ball. The most simple thing, the 2 words in rugby that every single person understands. What now happens? Because you've got a World Cup coming, you've got a Lions tour coming, and this guy Eddie Jones can't continue the hot air and the bluster because no one's going to believe it anymore.
Well, you're beating my drum. This is what I've been saying from the beginning. And I interviewed Tim Horan, the great Tim Horan, who's a mate of mine, who I think played 80 tests for the Wallabies. He's now a commentator on Stan Sport. He was the most valuable player, best player in the 1999 World Cup. And I said to him, Tim, I said, love, I said, pet, I said, look. I said, you remember that I've got very little technical knowledge of rugby when you and I were playing together, even less in the professional realm. So let me run by you the things that I have gained from watching all this to see if my assumptions are correct. And my opening point was exactly that one you've just named. When nobody cries out mine, it's madness. He said correct. I said, well, what about when the Wallabies against Fiji with 1 minute to go kick the damn ball down the field instead of keeping it. Was that madness? He said madness. I said Campo said that against Fiji, against Wales, it was a structured snore fest. I say it wasn't a structured snore fest. It was a combination between an upturned bowl of spaghetti and the fall of Saigon. Who is correct? Who is correct? And he said, he prevaricated a bit. I said, Tim, stop mucking around. Who is correct? And he said, Fitz, you are. Campo is never correct. And so I was satisfied with all that. And yes, is it dispiriting? Is it disappointing? Yes, it is. But was getting Eddie Jones back madness? I say no, it wasn't. I say it's been a disaster, an absolute disaster, getting Eddie Jones back. Was it obvious at the time that would be a disaster? No, well, it wasn't obvious to me. I mean, I like Dave Rennie, good guy Dave Rennie, nice guy Dave Rennie, and had reasonable results Dave Rennie. But came within an ace of beating the All Blacks, came within an ace of beating France. I mean, pretty good results. But you've got Eddie Jones, who has got more points on the board as a coach. He's a human cattle prod getting results out of his teams. When he's suddenly available, to get him back was a brutal, but to me seemingly brilliant move. Where do we go from here? And I said with Tim Horan, I mean, this is the other thing that came out of Tim Horan. Because I'd written in the Herald, I said, look, Eddie's just got to go. Just got to go. You can't perform the way the Wallabies have performed and be like that. Horan differed there. He'd been in the dressing room. He's been around the players a lot more than I have. And to my amazement, he says, and I take Tim at his word, that Eddie Jones still has the dressing room, that the players still believe in him, which is nice. But those players are not necessarily, if you and I, Martin, let's just say you and I got together with Dr. Evil, and the three of us said, all right, let's work out, this is 6 months ago, let's work out how we can completely stuff up the Wallabies. I would say, okay, here's the plan. We'll wipe out anybody that's played over 30, 40 tests, okay? Can't play anymore. We won't take them. Okay, we'll leave Michael Hooper with 110 tests. We'll leave him behind. Foley, no, too experienced, we'll leave him behind. And you'd say, okay, that's a great plan. Then you'd say, okay, we'll have nobody call out mine. When the ball goes, I'd say, don't be ridiculous. No, but, Dr. Evil and I would put you back in your box and say that's not possible. So the way that Eddie's done it has been, the way they've performed has been outrageously bad. But Tim Horan makes the point, there are talented players there. There are some very good players, but under Eddie, they just haven't performed. Horan, however, says he still enjoys their confidence. They should stay there and grow into being the team we hope they can be.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. Yes, we will also keep tabs with what's going on in the Premier League. And our man Tom Rennie from talkSPORT joins us as he does every week. And the highlight, I suppose, for most neutrals, Tom, has got to be the fact that that's back-to-back defeats for Man City. Here, you and me were at the start of the season wondering whether they would lose a game and perhaps do the 2004 Invincibles. But now they've lost back-to-back games, and I don't even know when's the last time that happened, probably before Pep Guardiola arrived. How significant is that win for Arsenal especially?
I think more importantly than it being significant for Arsenal, and I do think it's significant for Arsenal, I think it's significant for the Premier League, because when you and I whinge about it, and mainly I whinge about it, the big issue for me is that I don't like this dominance. I don't like Man City winning it every year. I don't like what the Sovereign Wealth Fund that backed them have done to the Premier League as competition. And no one in the 100-plus year history of English football's top division has ever won the title 3 years in a row. So I think for the good of the game, for the good of the successful commercial product the Premier League is, that frankly pays my wages and keeps my kids in shoes, we need somebody else to win this competition, and it's very difficult to do. The only way to do that is for City to lose 6 games. 6 games. That's what we need. They have already lost 2 in a row. That's brilliant for the league, and that will give a little bit of intrigue to the season, because at some point they're going to go on a run of winning 20 games, probably in the second half of the season, like they usually do. So the more they can drop at the start of this campaign, the better. They probably could have lost against West Ham a couple of weeks ago. They did lose against Wolves in the following game and have lost this one as well. So magnificent news for the league. And if City don't win it this year, we can go back to being indifferent to them winning it again. In terms of Arsenal, I think they have made improvements from last season. I think Declan Rice is a huge upgrade on Thomas Partey and Granit Xhaka. To win a game without Bukayo Saka, I think he played in 80-plus games in a row for Arsenal before Sunday. That's a huge moment. But I think if they're going to be champions this year, and I think there's less of a chance even now than there was last year, considering I do think City will come on strong and Arsenal are in the Champions League this year, which will cause some bad league performances, which they didn't have in the previous campaign. I think that what they need to do is think about where they are in January. If they're top of the league in January by 4 or 5 points, go and get that striker. That's the most important thing for Arsenal right now. If they get there again, they get to the summit, they make those ruthless decisions that last year they didn't do. This year with Raya and Ramsdale, they've done it. Now they've got to do it at boardroom level and bring in someone like Victor Osimhen or similar to score them the goals to make them champions.
Right, so what we're talking about is the deja vu department all over again, isn't it? Because last year Arsenal were in that pole position. I think they had an 8-point lead. I don't know whether it was games in hand or something, but then they dropped those 3 draws and they dropped them against Southampton, Liverpool and West Ham. And a couple of those games, they were a couple of goals up as well, and that really did cost them.
Yeah.
Is this a different Arsenal side? I mean, they've got Declan Rice. Obviously, that makes a huge difference. They've got a couple of other signings, but you still think up front that they lack that punch.
Yeah, this is the key issue. I think Declan Rice is a massive upgrade. I think he's a world-class player, and I think he and Rodri are the best 2 players in their position in the league, and I think his absence for City was a massive thing in the game as well. There's 1 or 2 players that are undroppable for Pep Guardiola that you never play Pep Roulette with, and Rodri is one of them. He's missing with that stupid suspension he got sending off against Forest. But look, Arsenal defensively very, very strong. I think David Raya is a better goalkeeper than Aaron Ramsdale in every possible category. I think Arteta handled that really badly, but in the end, he's got his better goalkeeper in goal for the big games, and that will make a massive difference. But offensively, Martinelli coming on, being fit for 45 minutes was the differential in this game. Without that, Eddie Nketiah, Leandro Trossard, anyone else they can bring in is a huge downgrade on the 2 world-class wingers and the very good striker they have in their team. So I think that is a key concern. And if you are going to win the Premier League, you're going to need someone to score 20 goals. Maybe it'll be Bukayo Saka, potentially. But if not him, I don't see any other potential in this team to score that many, and certainly not central striker. That needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed now, or what will happen is there'll be 4 or 5 points clear. They'll lose a couple of games to teams that need to stay in the Premier League. And remember, I always say this, it's harder to win the Premier League as a London club than it is anywhere else, because you have 7 or 8 derbies a year, home and away, as compared to City, who have got the United game, as you know these days, easy win.
Yes. And
the rest of it is plain sailing for them. You know, no one is desperate to beat Man City bar Man United. Tottenham, West Ham, Chelsea, Fulham, Brentford, they're all desperate to beat Arsenal, and that's a big differential too.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
The Platform.